Hello folks, this is Dave Thomas from FMOTION. Forgive my voice, I've just come off the back of a cold, so I'm sounding a little bit Barry White, but we'll push through. I wanted to do a tutorial about one of the scenes in my latest, one of my latest videos, short film called Droid Shopping Channel. You can check out on YouTube or Instagram. It's my favourite scene, and it's one of the more recent ones that I created for it. And I just wanted to give you a rundown of the things that I've learned while I made it. Some of the stuff that I've done I knew how to do, but the majority of it I didn't. I learned as I was going, so maybe it could be of help to you as well. So let me show you what we're going to make. So let's start by creating a new composition. Do 4096 by 2160, cinema 4K, 24 frames, about 25 seconds. We won't need that long, but can always trim it down afterwards. Just call this render comp. Okay, let's hide our other one in there because we don't need it. Right, so got an image here that I cut out, some supermodel guy. Don't know who he is, but look him up. It may not be necessary to even cut it out, but I did use this image in some of my other videos, so you could just have a flat photo if you like. And we'll create a nice little background, BG, all kind of light grey-ish colour. See how that looks. Yeah, that's fine to start with. We can change that down the line. Here we go, we've got our image of our supermodel. Now, the first thing I did was cut the face out. So, you don't have to be perfect with this, because I kind of think it looks better if it's a bit janky. Just because the whole idea of this video was that these kind of droids are going wrong and they don't really know what they're doing. So, I wanted to be consistent with that. You've got to think about the story that you're telling and how kind of the style of what you're creating fits in with that. I've got a nice little mask there. This can be changed down the line if it doesn't look great. So there I am, floating head. Okay, and now I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to call the top one face, and the bottom one body. And on the bottom one, we're going to invert the mask. So now we have face and body with the face cut out. So on the body layer, you can add a little drop shadow. You are going to get some shadow around these parts that you don't really want, so what you can do is duplicate this body layer, move this to the bottom, call this body drop shadow. Now on the top layer, we can turn this drop shadow effect off. We don't need it. Bottom one, we're going to choose shadow only. As you can see, we've only got the shadow on this layer and not the actual body. You can go ahead and mask out part of the image. Don't want to see our drop shadow. This one's going to be subtract as well. There we go, drop shadow's gone. So now we have our face and our face with a hole in it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is show you the Saber plugin, which I used for all of the laser cutting on this. It is one of the most powerful plugins I've ever used. I use it on basically every project I work on, and it's free. So if you haven't played around with that yet, I suggest you do it. You can go to I'm not affiliated with Video Copilot at all, but you can go to videocopilot.net and download it there for free. Okay, so we're going to make new solid. We're going to call this face laser cutout. So we're going to use the mask we have here for to feed into Saber to tell it where our line is. It's one of the great things about Saber. You can set it to use text, masks, anything you want. So create a new layer. We're going to copy this mask onto our face cutout layer. So you can see we have our masked out shape. On this layer, we could add Saber. So this is what you're going to get when you first add Saber. You know, you can play around with this. It's really cool. But we're going to customize our core. We're going to say layer masks, and this will use any masks that you have on this layer as the as your line. So you can have multiple masks, 1, 2, whatever. And we're going to add the transfer mode to screen, which is going to get rid of the black. And we're going to end up with this, which is already looking like we want it to look. Now, perhaps we'll go with a different color today. Maybe we'll have it blue. I mean, you know, you can have it any color you like. And this is all changeable down the line. You know, it's all procedural. If you go ahead and change this mask, then your outline will change. So, you know, you can update all this as you go. Right. So I think we're going to have a little bit less intensity there. We want this to look like a cut. Maybe bring down the core size. As we want to have the same effect on our face layer, if we go ahead and animate this now, when we copy those layers, all our animation will still be there. It will all be in sync, so it's just the most efficient way of doing it. Okay, so now we're going to animate our laser cut going around our face. So we want start offset for this. So you can see it's 0% now, it's fully on. If I go to 100%, that's fully off. So we want to start fully off. Let's set a keyframe. Dial this back down to 0, which gives us our complete circle. Let's just get the keyframes up here so we can see what's going on. And, you know, F9, easy ease these just to make it look a bit more. Well, let's just drop this down just so you can render a bit more quickly. Because this is what we have now. Again, light speeds and everything can be changed down the line. We'll just get our animation correct now. So we have our line coming up. Now, let's go ahead and duplicate this and apply it to our face layer. And copy this. Now, we know our face is going to drop down later on in the video, so we can go ahead now and just parent our second version of this to the face. Change the color just to make it easier to see. And we want it to be above our face layer. Right, so now we have this. Just cool, that's where we want to be so far. And I think that the second version of this should maybe be a little bit larger, just looks more dramatic. I think you can see kind of looks like lights leaking out from the face when it goes round. It looks cool. Right, so now we have wherever we move our face, our line's going to go with it, all nice and synced. So the next thing I did now was I animated the face falling off. So we know we want it to probably start acting around here. We're going to offset the anchor point on the face just because I like to have a little bit of rotation that isn't central. It just looks a bit more realistic. As something might slide off. So we're going to do position and rotation on this. Set our stopwatch keyframes. Move forward. Going to bring this all the way down. Out of shot. Give it maybe. I'm going to do -8. Go the other way. See what we've got there. Way too slow, but you can see what we're getting. We're going to ease these keyframes, go into our graph editor, and just give this a really extreme ramp up as if it's sliding slowly. Gravity takes over, boom, falls down. So get something like this. Now I think it needs a little bit more rotation there. Let's go -12. Let's go 50%. Yeah, I think that's better. We can tighten that up. I think maybe it needs a little bit longer. It's a bit more dramatic that way if it takes longer to slide. Cool, right. Now, I did play around with adding motion blur to these layers, but I didn't think it looked as good. I don't know why. I mean, maybe I could change my mind on that, but I kind of like the way, without the motion blur, you can see the eyes more easily staring at you all the way down. It just looked a bit more creepy to me. But you know, that's to your taste, isn't it? You can change any of this you like. That's the beauty of it. So we can see just as the mask closes, maybe we're just going to retime that slightly and get a frame back. So as soon as that mask closes, boom, the face comes off. Right. Now, the next thing I did was I added smoke, and this is a technique I've never used before. I've always used stock footage, which, you know, it's great. It's cool. It's always high quality and easy to use, but you know, you can't customize it, and you can't make it look exactly how you want it every time. So I learned this new technique. I've used particle systems before, but it's the first time I've ever used this plugin. It's an Adobe plugin, so it comes with After Effects. It's called Particle Playground, so I'm going to call this Particles. That is how you spell particles, isn't it? It doesn't really matter anyway. Okay, we're going to make this layer a different colour. Just makes it easier to see things in your layer panel. It's got a nice green, lovely green that is. Right, so we're going to add Particle Playground. So this is what you'll get when you load Particle Playground up. As you can see, particles are being emitted, they're falling straight down, and they're a horrible red colour. So we need to think about what smoke does. Smoke goes up, so the first thing we're going to do is turn the gravity right down to 0, I'd say. So now our particles are shooting straight up the smoke might. Now we can use some stuff like velocity, dispersion, and we want to add some expressions to this to add some randomness. So you can Alt click or Option click on stopwatch, bring up our expression window here, and we're just going to do wiggle 1 by say 35. Let's go with that. So you can see it's given us a little bit. I think maybe we'll increase that. Yeah, okay. Velocity dispersion, again, we're going to do a wiggle here. Let's say 50. We're going to do direction. I probably don't want to do as much on this. We don't want it to look too extreme. Let's try 10 particles per second. Let's put a wiggle on this. I think we'll go high on this bad boy. Start at 500 and we'll have it change. Okay. Velocity, we're going to put a wiggle on this. Going to put a wiggle on direction random spread. Really getting our wiggle on. Well, that might be too much, you know. So we're starting to get like bellowed smoke coming out here, which is cool. Direction, we're going to wiggle this. So let's try 10. Here we go. starting to look a little bit smoky here. Right, let's change the colour. Let's start with the grey. And now we can still see individual particles. That's not what we want. So we're going to add a fast blur to this. So about 20 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, it's looking cool, but it's a bit slow for my liking, so we're going to need to increase the velocity a little bit. So let's start with 250. Okay, that looks pretty smoky to me. I'm liking that. So we have our smoke. It's a little bit hard to see here, but I did make multiple copies of this last time just because you couldn't see it very well. And we want our smoke to animate on just as we're starting to, so we're going to do smoke layer and our face laser cutout layer. That's all we need on this, just going to make it easy to follow. Let's get full res and zoom in quite nicely. So I'll start our smoke emitting in this layer, and we're going to move, stopwatch the position. So I'm going to go along each layer and just move this emitter in line with our line animating on. It's easy ease, so it's going to take a while to kick in. You know, you might be able to track this, but I don't know how well it would work. I just found it more accurate and less faffy to do it frame by frame. But I will speed this up for you so you don't have to sit here and watch me do every single frame. Okay, well, that didn't take me very long. Hope it didn't take you very long to watch. Okay, so here we go. Let's just RAM preview this. See the smoke rising from the bottom. It comes around from the top. But we're also going to... I know what I didn't do. Didn't animate the particles per second starting, so it starts from the very beginning. So what we can do here is go ahead and this is a bit naughty because I should have really done that, but we can get away with it by just maybe keyframing up the smoke on, because as soon as the laser starts there's going to be a lot of other things covering that up. Okay, so let's just triple the particles just to see what that looks like, and let's turn the other layers back on because we want to see it all together. Okay, smoke might be a little bit dark. I don't know really, it depends what, it depends how you want it to look, I suppose, doesn't it? But that's the technique anyway. I'm actually quite happy with that for now. All of this we can come back and figure out once we can see everything all together. Goes the face. And the smoke's still coming out where it stops, which is cool. And down goes the face. Cool, kind of looks like the smoke that might come out of a precision laser cut. Right, now the next thing I did was I added a lens flare. So this is another video Copilot plugin. It's not free, this one, but it is cheap for what you can do with it. So let's go ahead and add laser optical flare. Laser optical flare, right. Similar to Saber, you get a black background. Go up into options here. Let's just pick a nice looking one. Again, like, we can animate this and we can come back and change the flare after the fact. All the animation is procedural, so that's not a problem. We'll go for screen on this one as well. Now we have our optical flare. Now, this works in much the same way as the smoke, but we might be able to use an expression to speed things up. So, if we have our XY position, which is the position where our actual hotspot of our flare is, and we want to connect it to particle playground Canon position. We've done all these keyframes. There's no reason why we have to do these keyframes again. So let's pick whip our optical flare's position onto playground position. And we should have our optical flare following our smoke perfectly. Lovely, that was easy. Okay, now we want to play around with this a little bit. It's way too bright. I think perhaps 50. Bring the scale down to, we want it maybe 90 on the brightness. No, it's still too bright. It's all trial and error. There we go, cool, all right. So we want our optical flare to animate in with our smoke, I'd say. So down to there, drop that down to 0. And it animates in just before it starts moving. Bang, right, okay. So now this is my favourite part, adding the laser, because once I'd added the laser, I was just like, yeah, this looks sick. So I used Saber again for this. Let's do another solid. We'll change this we'll change the layer colour as well, just keep it separate. And particles purple. Right. So we're going to do Saber again this time. So I'm going to animate this by, again, creating a mask. So we're going to have our deep blue solid layer. Got a little mask in orange, that's a good colour for us. So let's see. Now you can do this by animating the core start and core end, but I found it's just a bit weird when it, in between frames when it loaded, it did this weird stretching thing which just didn't make it easy. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it using the mask. So let's click our stopwatch for mask path, forward 1 frame. Again, we're just going to move our points to where we want our laser to be. Frame by frame. It's a slog job, but proof's in the pudding. If any of you remember back to the good old days of rotoscoping by hand using masks for we had all the advanced tools and stuff that we've got now, roto brush and things. Okay, so I will speed this up now and catch you when it's done. Okay, and I'm back. Let's see what we have here. So we have our mask, as you can see, following around our laser cut, which is looking pretty cool. So now we can go ahead and turn on our Saber layer, switch it to layer masks, and now we've got our laser beam traveling around our head. Looking cool so far. I don't like the way it's all blue for some reason. It just doesn't look pretty to me, but let's go ahead and just style our laser quickly anyway. We'll solo this layer just to make our rendering a little bit quicker. Now in the original I did it so I had it, I raised the size of the core significantly, and then so the start size we can go up to 200. End size will go down just to make it thinner. Looks a bit more like a precision laser then. I could put a little bit of flicker on it just because that's cool. Some distortion, maybe 10 or so, just to make it look like it's interacting with the atmosphere. 5, just to give it a bit of texture. But where are we? Here we are. Okay, let's unsolo this layer, see what we got. And now we need to animate our laser coming in just like the rest. So it's at its brightest here. We're going to animate the end offset. So we want it to be fully in, stopwatch, back to here, fully out. I think we need to bring it in a little bit sooner. Easy ease those. Need to bring in our optical flare slightly later. And our smoke as well starts too soon. Let's just open these up here. I'll be able to get away with just taking these out, See, this is me fixing mistakes that I should have remembered to do. But it's an important thing to see someone else doing, I suppose, so you don't make the same mistakes I make in life. Right, let's just see what we got. Let's just have a little render in full resolution just to see how we're looking so far. Now I do notice there that our lens flare is arriving again before our laser's fully down, so let's fix that. Probably have it. Yeah, that's good. You know what, let's have a green laser for this, and a green, maybe choose like a more subtle colour for the lens flare. Let's have our laser. Now I never bother matching colours on this, I just kind of move it around till I think it looks right. I think we need a bit more distortion. Let's go something a bit more extreme. And we can do see how we look. Let's drop this down to 1/4. Okay, and we need to animate our laser off as well. So we want to do our lens flare brightness needs to come down at the same time. And offset. And I think our lens flare needs to come off as soon as our laser has left the building. Cool. Watch that again. All right. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. Now, it really is up to you what you want to put behind this face. I put a circuit board just because I thought it was funny that the laser would cut, instead of just cutting the skin off, it would, you know, cut the entire front of the face off, which is like, again, the robot's going a bit mad, forgetting what they're doing. So I've just got a stock image that I purchased from Envato Elements. Again, I'm not sponsored by them, just saying where I got it. Okay, so we want to bring this down under our face layer. Ooh. And trim it down somewhat. Bring it in so we can't see the edges. Cool, now let's see what we've got here. So there we are with our circuit face. Now, looks a bit bright to me. Just gonna bring that down slightly. Contrast up just to look a bit cooler. And the other thing is, it just looks, oh, bring that back here, it just looks a bit too 2D for my liking. So underneath it, I added a solid layer. Let's go, just slightly off black. Now I wanted to create an inner shadow here. There are little plugins for that, but I just prefer doing it like this. So we don't want it to go outside of our layer. We want it to all be inside. So that's our first mask. We're going to call this inner shadow. And now we want to create a more round kind of shaped mask to go within this one. So we're going to choose our lips. And you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Kind of like this. And just move that. Now we're going to select on the second mask, subtract, and feather it. It just gives us, let's just turn the face laser cutout layer off and pull these other layers for a minute. So you can see what we're doing here. We're just adding a little bit of shadow. Let's just turn the laser off as well and all this. Just adding a little bit of shadow into here, you know, just to make it look a bit more interesting. I want to bring that above that layer. Yeah, right. So, I mean, this is faded quite substantially, probably a little bit more. Now you can also duplicate this layer if you like, and on the second copy of this mask you can just reduce the feathering to bring it. You can even increase the mask size just to make sure it's right near the edge. That way you get a stronger shadow near the edge and a lighter shadow. And it just gives it a little bit of depth. Looks cool, I think, anyway. So let's leave those there. Turn the rest of our layers on. So now we have this reveal here. Now I'm not going to bother putting the little processors on, you know, that's just, it's not really, you know, you can just cut those out, stick them on. The last thing I wanted to do was just add in the optical flares for the eyes, and then show you how I created the camera shake using slider controls, which are super handy. You know, you could put a wiggle expression, you could pre-compose this wiggle, put a wiggle expression on, but it's just going to wiggle throughout the whole thing. So I'll just show you quickly how to, you know, do a more controlled wiggle, which is, I use it on almost every project that I work on. It's just really handy to know. So let's add another solid. We're going to call this left eye optical flare. We're going to make it completely black. Add optical flares on. Now, I quite like this as it is, but we need to get rid of this old chestnut here, so we will solo our glint and glow. Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna put this to the screen. Now we move it over to where we know the eyes are, and I'm going to put a little bit of a rotation offset on this. So start the rotation at the beginning, go right to the end, and maybe do 90. We don't want it to move too fast. You can see, let's just solo this layer. Just got a little bit of rotation on it, just to keep it interesting looking. And then we'll go ahead and duplicate this layer. Let's turn. Let's go back to where our face is on, and change the XY position of the second one to the right eye. Rename our layer. You know, we want to animate these, you know, coming on as the face drops. So you can, within optical flares, you can do a foreground layer and stuff, but again, I don't know why I just prefer doing this by hand. You know, it takes longer, but it's just more satisfying. So let's start with our left eye. We're going to do brightness. Let's move to where we want it to come on. Let's just go back one frame. See our face, here it comes. What I'd say about there is where we want it to be full brightness. So that's our full brightness keyframe. Move back one, and we're going to set the brightness to 0. And I just like to put a little easy ease on those just to make it look a bit cooler. That might be too quick. We'll go back one. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And our second one is going to be slightly before, so can I just copy these keyframes into this one and just shunt them back a little bit. Cool. Great. And I'm actually going to turn the scale up on these just to make them a little bit brighter, because we want them to look freaky as hell when the face drops off. Okay. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-compose all of this. Call it full render. Move all attributes. So now we've got all of our layers in a nice comp. This is where I normally do final color correction and add in any other little bits and pieces that I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase the size to 105. This just gives us a nice border so that when we add our camera shake, we don't get any, it doesn't come off frame or anything. So I'm going to add new null object. I'm going to call this position. And we want to make the position of our composition wiggle. So we're going to stopwatch on the position here. Going to add slider control, position, duplicate it. We're going to have frequency. This is going to be our first control, and amplitude our second control. So we want to have two because we want to be able to control the frequency and the amplitude separately. You could do it with one, but again, you just got more control here, and it's not no more complicated to set up. So we want to swell this down. We want to get our effects out. You can see the two sliders here. Now we want to add our expression, which is wiggle, but we're not going to add an amplitude and a frequency because we want the amplitude and frequency to be taken from where our slider is, and then we can animate our slider increasing or decreasing. So I'm just going to put 0, 0. Now, the first one here is frequency. The second number is amplitude. So we just want to highlight our frequency and pick whip onto our frequency slider. And that'll add in this nice little expression here for us. Do the same on our amplitude, and we're going to go to the amplitude slider. Now this is it. Done. So if I increase this and this and then render out, you can see we're getting a nice bit of wiggle. So now we want to find the place where our laser kind of kicks in fully, which is where we want our wiggle to start ramping up from. Let's go here, and we're going to do our sliders. Let's go frequency 10, amount 10. Let's just start there. And we'll go back to here, and we're going to turn that. Oop, we'll turn that down to 0. We want our wiggle to continue up until about here. We're going to put some keyframes here, and then we're going to ramp this wiggle down back to 0 again. So see how that looks. I'm going to turn on motion blur for this layer. I don't think that's enough. I think we need another bit in the middle here. We're going to go to 20. But it really gets a bit. It needs to ramp up more there. Okay. Right, you can live with that. Now I'm going to increase the scale slightly. I'm also going to add one for rotation. Obviously you've got to be a lot more careful with rotation because it's a lot more extreme looking. So we're going to duplicate this, we're going to call it rotation. Now we can leave our keyframes in just for now because they're timed up to the other keyframes. And we're going to bring down the rotation property. Again, add in our wiggle expression with 0 values. Just close this up so we don't get confused. Highlight this one, pick whip to our frequency slider. Highlight this one, pick whip to our amplitude slider. Now we're going to see a lot of movement here because it's taking the values from our previous keyframes. This is way too much. So what I want to do here is perhaps frequency, maybe we can get away with. Tend to go much more subtle when it comes to rotation, as you've seen the effect that it can have there. So let's try 2. That might even be too much. I mean, it doesn't look amazing, but you can change it to be how you want it to look, which is good. So I think maybe let's do 15. There you have it. There you have it. So I hope you've learned something on this tutorial. It's my first ever tutorial, so you know, any suggestions or improvements, or if you watched any of my stuff, any other tutorials you'd like me to do, let me know in the comments. Send me a message. I'll be happy to chat to you and stuff. So see you on the next one. Cheers.